wouldn't it be great if there was a latte art video that was made by someone that had absolutely no idea how to do it as well? Figuring it out together. Always been coffee stations. There's always been a barista at every single restaurant I've ever worked at. But to me, coffee was literally just, hey, can I have a shot of espresso? Put it in a 1 quart deli cup and then drown it in milk, and that's it. I didn't care about any of the finer points of coffee. It was just caffeine to get me through dinner service. But recently I have found myself going into cafes a lot because it's all I knew how to order. I just started ordering lattes. As a result of that, I got very into it and I wanted to learn how to do latte art specifically. I think it's fucking cool. I think it's freaking cool. And I thought it would be fun just to like document my journey, like from day one, knowing absolutely nothing, to being where I am now, still kind of amateur, but like decent. And I thought it was gonna be like a really easy video. I thought it was gonna be a layup. I thought I would be done in like a week. The more I learned about coffee, the more I kind of just fell in this rabbit hole. There's so many things about coffee that I just had no idea existed. First, I'm gonna meet up with my friend Tony, who owns a couple of cafes with his partner. And he gave us like a crash course. He invited us into his cafe, let us play with the espresso machine, and I asked for like the most basic tips and tricks, and then I just went with it. So let's do it. We're doing latte art. Yeah, pretty much. That's it. Hi, I'm Tony. I'm a co-founder and owner of Farm Cup Coffee. We have a yellow coffee truck on Santa Monica Boulevard. Doing latte art, it's really important to pull the right espresso consistency also. So it has to do with the grind size that you're using, the freshness of the beans, and then also the type of bean. So certain beans have more crema, which is like that smooth kind of foamy thing you see at the top of espresso. If you have a good texture on top of that, it's a better canvas for the milk when you do the latte art. So it's both the espresso and the milk texture. I'm off center, but pull up really high to cut through it. Yeah. It's an onion. It's an onion. Yeah. This is my start, guys. So my first order of business was finding beans that I wanted to use. Now, there are a lot of types of coffee beans out there with their own unique characteristics and all kinds of different roasts, from light, medium, dark, and everywhere in between. Now, in general, a dark roast is used for espresso. And the more research that I did and the more people that I talked to, the more it was recommended to me to actually use a medium or a medium dark roast. So I grabbed all kinds of beans and did my own research. And what I noticed was with the really dark roasts, or they're sold as espresso beans sometimes, is that you pretty much lose any characteristic and they all kind of taste the same, which is good if you want a consistent cup of espresso. And they also tend to be really oily, which is kind of a good thing because it can emulsify into your crema and help out your espresso. But you do have to be careful because it can clog or damage your coffee grinder. So just be sure to check with your manufacturer and make sure there's not any notes about that. But ultimately, I ended up preferring a medium to a medium dark roast. There's more varying flavors going on. So everything that I make in this video, I'm making on the Breville Barista Pro. It has a grinder attached to it and also a steam wand, and it comes with some tools and accessories. This is not sponsored. This is just the one that I have, and I actually do enjoy it. And in terms of how expensive espresso machines can be, this is actually towards the lower end, maybe middle lower end. When I was looking up espresso machines, some of them were several $1,000s for a home model, and this one was like 450 bucks. So I was like, not bad. And it turns out I actually really enjoy it and it gets the job done. Now, I have already dialed in my grind size on my espresso machine, so it should be a little bit finer than sugar, but coarser than something like flour. If you check with your manufacturer, they will probably tell you what grind size to use for espresso. But once you figure out your grind setting for whatever grinder that you have, you can start dosing your shot. And there's a couple ways that you can do it, but it's generally recommended for a double shot of espresso that you put 16 to 19 grams of ground coffee beans in there. So the first way is just to weigh the coffee beans and then put that into your grinder, and then you just run those beans through your coffee grinder into your portafilter, and then you're ready to go. Another way that you can do it is to grab your scale and then put your portafilter on top and then clear it. Go over to your coffee grinder and then adjust the settings so that every single time that you use it, it will be the exact amount that you want. So I have it set up to where every single time I run a program on it, it will be 19 grams of ground coffee, which is exactly what I need. And then once my coffee is in the portafilter, one thing that was pretty universally agreed on is that your coffee grounds must be distributed evenly in the portafilter. So I give it a light tap, and then I got this thing called a leveler. You just stick it in the top and give it a twist, and it will distribute the coffee grounds evenly inside of your portafilter, and then you can tamp it down a little bit. But you want the water from your espresso machine to be able to flow equally through your coffee grounds, so certain spots don't get over extracted or under extracted, and you get a more clean flavor of your espresso. And then once I'm ready, I can throw that in the machine and then press play. And then I got this open portafilter so I could watch the espresso be pulled, so I knew if I need to adjust anything. But if everything was done correctly, your espresso should be coming out like this, nice and evenly in the center, flowing like a warm honey almost. It's not watery and it's not squirting out anywhere. There's no channeling or anything like that. So I know that this shot is being pulled evenly. And then if I look at the shot, I have a nice layer of crema on top. That's another thing. Certain beans produce more crema than others. Like there are blends of beans, like a medium roast, and then they throw some dark coffee beans in there because they produce more crema than the medium roast. It's a whole world all on its own. But now I'm gonna move on to texturing my milk. I'm going to purge my wand so that any condensation on the inside is no longer there when I start steaming. So I'm gonna grab my pitcher of milk, and then I'm gonna put the wand just barely below the surface of the milk so I can start incorporating air into it. And if you notice, the wand is just slightly off center, so it'll make this like little whirlpool that'll pop the really big bubbles. And it should sound like this. Just hissing ever so slightly. If it's squealing or yelling at you, just adjust where your wand is. The steaming wand on these home models is generally a little bit weaker than the cafe ones, so it actually gives you more time to adjust the texture of your milk. So in general, for my model, I incorporate air for about 6 to 8 seconds, and then I dunk the wand below the surface, and then I keep that cyclone going, and that'll pop all the really big bubbles. And then I give it a tap on the counter, and then I give it a little swirl, and it should look kind of like wet paint. Now, this was actually the hardest thing for me to figure out, because when I was learning how to texture milk, one of the things that I was told was go by feel. So feel the pitcher. When it becomes warm, that's when you will dunk your wand underneath the surface. And when it's too hot to touch, that's when you should stop. I have cook hands. Too hot to touch for me is probably a lot hotter than too hot to touch for other people. So all my lattes were coming out like this. I was essentially adding way too much air. I was texturing it for way too long, and I was making foam, like really bubbly foam. And I kept trying to figure out what was going on. Like, I knew that there was something wrong with the milk, and it wasn't until I saw this.
Is it possible to steam milk without even holding the jug? Huh? Let's find out. So you want to find the perfect angle to make your milk spin, and you want to place the tip of your steam wand just below the milk so it lets air in at the start. I have a belief with coffee that the less you do, the better the result's going to be. And that applies to steaming. The less you're moving your jug around, the silkier your milk is going to be.
Look, Mom, no hands. I'm a big boy.
So apply this theory to when you're still holding the jug. Find your spot and do as little as possible. You can't get milk better than that, and I literally did nothing. Coffee up!
I will tag that creator in the description. He puts out great coffee content, but I pretty much figured out that I was doing way too much. I needed to pull it back and do less. And pretty much immediately, the texture of my milk was a lot better. This was my first try after doing essentially nothing. I pretty much entirely ditched the temperature of the pitcher method and going by feel, and I just started doing less. So now I have my shot of espresso dialed in, and now I have my milk dialed in, so I can just start playing around with latte art. And this is pretty much just my progression. And another really big dummy mistake I made was I started with kind of like a harder pattern, where I should have started with was like a monk's head or a heart. And eventually I did go back and I did that. So to make your heart, you're gonna start by pouring in your milk from a little bit higher up from the glass, and then you're just gonna make one big dot. And then when your cup is almost full, you're gonna lift up your pitcher and you're gonna draw through, and that's gonna create your little heart. And I felt like I really rocked that, so I went for a rippled heart. That's when you shake your pitcher back and forth and do the exact same thing and draw through and make a little heart. I was pretty good at this one, but then I wanted to do it nicer. So the next day I tried again, and it came out pretty good. I was really happy with it. You know, this was my second time trying it, but I feel like since I started with a harder pattern, everything else kind of came a little bit naturally. I'm still by no means an expert in latte art, but you know, I feel like I made a lot of progress, and I'm happy. All right, anyways, that'll be it for this video. If you liked the video, please leave a thumbs up. It does help. Feel free to subscribe if you want, And as always, when in doubt, end the video.